at least for the mainstream parties, but a week on Saturday will see the annual conference of a name that many people perhaps had thought had vanished from our political spectrum, the Social Democratic Party, the SDP, founded in the early 1980s by senior Labour figures who couldn't stand the leftwards drift of their movement and now enjoying a new lease of life. Rather than list the SDP's policies, it might help you get a handle on where they're coming from if I tell you who's speaking. Some of the people speaking at their conference: David Starkey, Lionel Shriver, Brendan O'Neill, Frank Furedi, Claire Fox, David Goodhart, Kathleen Stock and Rod Liddle, quite a number of our contributors on that list. I think probably all of them, actually. With me now, William Clouston, the leader of the SDP. William Clouston, thanks so much for joining us today. We do appreciate it. What are you offering that other parties aren't?
Well, we offer a blend, really, of what people would look at as left-wing politics and right-wing, but actually the blend works perfectly well. On economics, we're left-leaning, but we describe ourselves as culturally traditional. So that's basically the offer. And I think if you look at particular policies, it works very well. But I think broadly, people are crying out for something different. The Labour Party is in very, very serious trouble. I don't believe they're capable of winning a general election, and they may not win a general election again. And the Conservatives are not governing us well. I think if you look at how we're governed in general, I think we could improve on things. So, yeah, I think people are crying out for something different. And we would argue that there's a sort of SDP-shaped hole in British politics, and we're filling it.
Let's imagine you fill a hole even so far as going all the way to Downing Street. If you were in government right now, how would you deal, for instance, with labour shortages? Because that poses a particular quandary, doesn't it, for a party that's left-leaning economically, but when it comes to social policy is a little more right-leaning, because your natural inclination, I suppose, would be not to smile on immigrants coming in and driving those lorries, but on the other hand, it needs to be done, doesn't it?
Oh, no, I wouldn't have any more. I wouldn't solve the problems in the haulage industry by importing labour. In fact, we've said we shouldn't do that. I think certain of these things are a result of literally ignoring training needs for 15, 20 years. And what Blair did was expand the universities foolishly. I mean, the university sector is far too big. We've neglected basic skills training, vocational skills and other things. And the only way you can cure that is actually putting the pressure on to actually incentivise companies and government to train people, and that's what's happening. But I think, Colin, we're a little bit late coming into this because we voted to leave the EU, several years ago, and people haven't done enough about it. But you can't. Every time there's a labour shortage, you can't solve it by just importing more people. Until we realise we've got to literally train our own fellow citizens, we're going to have these problems again and again.
William, just in terms of the style of the thing, what would you say to those who argue, here's a sensible prospectus, I can agree with an awful lot on it, like the analysis, that's convincing, fills the gap that's not filled by anybody else, but they just need to punch through. Maybe even their leader needs to be a bit, I don't know, more shouty.
Well, you can only be who you are. I mean, I think what the public don't want is inauthenticity. I think you've got to be yourself. We're a sensible political programme. We're not a sort of here today, gone tomorrow party. You know, I joined the year after it started, 39 years ago. And if you look at our policy platform, it's serious. We're publishing a green paper on economics next month. Again, a serious bit of work, 30 pages, and it'll interest a lot of people. I think that's what people are looking for. I think we don't want to be governed by unserious people. We don't want to be governed by people that are more concerned with headlines this week than getting policy right. And I think, look at an issue like power generation, not top of the pops, but in fact, had Blair, you can't solve a problem like this instantly. Had Blair's government looked at nuclear power seriously 25 years ago, we'd have developed baseload. That would have been very helpful to industry. We want to reindustrialise. But you can't solve these things now. You've got to have
long-term
planning, and you've got to be serious. I think that's the sort of offer that the SDP has. I'm not going to get shouty. I mean, it's not really in my nature to be like that.
No, and I think that's probably to be applauded. William Clouston, appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.